Hello. It's so good to finally be back after around 1 month of silence from this channel. It's not because we've been on that much vacation at House Collective. We've basically been working on a new product that we're gonna release soon, and we'll talk much more about that in a coming video, but a small teaser. It's about video production, basically agentic video production. But that aside, in this video, I'll talk about kind of what's been happening over the summer within AI, because actually there's been so many announcements, and I didn't really expect this to happen over the summer. To many people, it may seem unimportant because a lot of the announcements and releases were small incremental releases, but they paint a much bigger picture, I think, that can really shift the power within the entire AI ecosystem. And it also creates a lot of new opportunities for the end user. So let's get into it. The first thing I want to talk about is also kind of the most recent thing, and that's the launch of Opus 5. And the Opus 5 is not as capable as Fable 5, but approaching Fable 5 in capabilities. So basically in raw intelligence, reasoning capabilities, and so on. It's a very capable model, but it comes at half the price of Fable 5. So that's the important aspect, that it's basically half the cost. Or if you're on a plan, you can use it. You get a lot more usage of Opus 5 than you do of for Fable 5. So we now have a model that's approaching Fable 5 in capabilities, but it's a lot more accessible. You get a lot more usage, so you can do a lot more stuff. Imagine what you can actually do with those tokens that are almost the same level of intelligence as Fable 5. Another point is, and I've really been appreciating this when I've been working with Opus 5, is that it doesn't come with the same guardrails that Fable 5 does. If you saw our last video, of just probably been hearing about the fact that Fable 5 was withheld, like it was basically blocked by the US government in June, shortly after its initial release. And the only way for Anthropic to get back Fable 5 into their model catalog was to put a lot of guardrails. So what it means is that now, whenever you ask Fable 5 something that just remotely could look like a cyber security request, even if it's just a review or like a kind of hardening security of your own systems, any biological question, even if it's something as simple as what a mitochondria is or whatever, like it will basically not log it. It will block it from Fable 5, but it will basically route it through an inferior model like Opus 4.8 before then sending the answer, the reply back to you. But Opus 5 seems to be much more capable in that sense, that it's not so heavily guarded. But my understanding from reading X and different impressions is that Opus 5 is basically a very aligned model. So it doesn't need all these guardrails because it's very difficult to actually get it to do something that would be against the guidelines, basically. So in essence, if you use Opus 5, you are at like a much lower risk of triggering these guardrails for something that's not really supposed to trigger them anyway, because it's not as sensitive. So in many instances, you would actually get a better response, a better reply from the model using Opus 5 compared to Fable 5, assuming that Fable 5 would trigger its guardrails and basically route it through an inferior model. So I think the perspectives of Opus 5 is really great. If you imagine a flow where you essentially ask an orchestrator agent to create tons of subagents that can be spawned and focus on very particular, very specific parts of a project, then each agent can have its own like Opus 5 session, basically focus on a very some very concentrated things and basically send it back to the orchestrator agent that puts it all together. I've seen amazing things like complete 3D models of cities like Manhattan and complete one-shotted computer games like Call of Duty like games, basically one-shotted from Opus 5. So it's really amazing what these models can now do, and now it's just way more accessible than it was before with Fable. Even with the plans, Fable was heavily restricted to 50% of the weekly usage. So basically, the cost of intelligence has just gone down. This video is sponsored by Carly, the AI executive assistant that works over email. Kali lets businesses deploy their own agents with their own email addresses to handle work across companies and tech stacks. Kali is the quickest way to create reliable automations to crucial business functions. Check out Kali at usekali.com. And this brings me to the next interesting development, which was the release of Kimi K3. And I think this is probably the most significant thing that happened all summer. What we've seen with the release of Kimi K3 from Moonshot AI, which is a Chinese model developer, open weight model developer, is that basically we now have an open weight model that's right up there at the frontier level among, like, not as good as Fable 5, but not far behind. It's right around that level with like Opus 5 and the GPT 5.6 and so on. I can probably we'll probably put some benchmarks on the screen for you to see. And it's just really interesting that that we now have an open weight model with those capabilities, because then if we assume that the strategy from the US is going to be to withhold new models for a period of time before release and requesting to put in like various guardrails, how significant will that be, or how is that gonna work out if we essentially get Chinese open weight models that have similar capabilities, just perhaps lacking a few months behind, but eventually catching up? I think that's very interesting and of course concerning, because there is obviously a reason why the US would want to restrict models, rightfully due to the concerns surrounding cyber security in particular in this case. But could it actually go and become a disadvantage for companies and nations using US models, that they get restricted to a level where you cannot even patch your own security flaws if Chinese models can basically discover your security flaws and you're not able to use American models to then fix them? So it opens this really interesting debate, like what are we gonna do if, say, by the end of the year we probably most definitely have a Chinese open weight model that's beyond Mythos level. Maybe at that point in time, Anthropic and OpenAI will have even more capable models. But if they are somehow restricted or if they are delayed in their release, then that raises some very interesting questions. That's the concerning part, of course. But I also think there are a lot of opportunities, because with Kimi K3, you can get access from various APIs, Open Router, for instance, and you can also get a subscription from Kimi or from Moonshot themselves. It's of course way cheaper than the American models. I don't know if I'm not sure how the plans compare. I guess it will still be cheaper, but it also kind of democratizes AI in a way that I really like, because as I mentioned in the last video, I'm really concerned with Europe because of the overregulation, bureaucracy from the European Union. And even though China has, as far as I heard, talked about perhaps considering similar strategies by withholding models for a while and so on. I don't think that's confirmed yet, but let's see what's going to happen. Despite that, we still get these open source models from China, and it's a hope for Europe that we can somehow still get access to frontier models, even if the US at some point would decide to restrict usage. And I'm not, obviously, I hope that won't happen, but honestly, like, I wouldn't be surprised, because the European Union leaders are just very, like, sorry to say, but they're just very dumb and not very strategic. This summer, you could ask, what has Europe contributed with to the space of AI? And not much. I haven't really seen any major announcements from European companies. But on the other hand, what the European Union has announced are basically huge fines to both AliExpress from China, but also Google. I think almost $1 billion, €1 billion fine to Google, a bit less, but almost €1 billion fine to Google. And obviously, like, I thought I can probably pull this statistic on the screen. I saw the graph that basically the income for Europe from fines is now projected to be bigger than the income from taxes collected from European tech companies. It's just insane. So basically, the European Union has made a business out of finding innovative, in my opinion, innovative companies for very bizarre things that aren't necessarily within the control of those companies, and which seem very like overly bureaucratic in a way where they just want to find flaws. I'm sure they have people hired to find these flaws, and then when you hire someone to find flaws, obviously they will find some flaws, but then Europe just decides to find the companies. And I don't know, I'm obviously against that because I don't think it's very constructive. I think it's more constructive for Europe to basically build amazing alternatives and build our own products, not just for Europe, but for the world. Like if we were actually an innovative economy, that we would actually have competitive companies, but sadly that's not the case. So I guess the European Union sees fining as the only real alternative, which is very sad. But back to my point, I don't know if that's going to mean both that and then with perhaps some other contributing factors that at some point America would just get really tired of Europe and say, okay, well, if you're going to fine us, then you cannot have our AI models. Like, it's not impossible to think that scenario. And in that case, it's good we have something like Kimi K3 and we have other Chinese labs basically at the frontier level too. Of course, I don't hope it gets to that point, but in any case, competition is good and it's just going to accelerate the AI race even further. With these rapid releases of new frontier models from Chinese labs, there have been quite a bit of concern about China potentially distilling American models. I've heard Anthropic be very outspoken about this and against distillation, and apparently they would have some proof that it has been going on. And obviously, I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case. Probably a legal gray area. And to some extent, you could say that the American models have also been, quote unquote, distilled from the open internet. I mean, I know you can't directly compare that, but it's basically knowledge pulled from the internet, which I also think it's fine because everything that's rapidly scalable seems to want to be free, like intelligence wants to be free, and like other kinds of things seem to go in that direction as well. So I think it's good because it advances the world. China could be more transparent, of course, but I heard a recent interview with Sam Altman, and he is basically not as concerned as Stereo from Anthropic, because as he points out, like it's basically going to happen. He says that OpenAI obviously distills their own models to create cheaper versions of their own models. I'm sure Anthropic does the same. Like Opus 5 is most likely a distillation of Fable. Chinese labs would probably, whenever Fable was available, they probably distilled it and made millions of requests to Fable endpoints. So I don't see how that can be completely avoided, and I also don't necessarily see the point because, I mean, again, like the internet is open, I guess when they release a model, when American companies release a model, then that's also a service you can buy and you can learn from that model. In this case, it's then to train other models. And as I mentioned before, it basically just accelerates the AI race and ultimately creates better products. So assuming that the US will still have more raw compute power, those frontier labs in the US will probably still be able to be on top and create the most advanced frontier models, unless China radically finds a new approach to training that's more resource conservative and spends less resources on the same model training. But if that's not the case, it basically requires China to rapidly increase their compute and probably build their own lithography EUV machine, which seems to also be the case. At least I've heard rumors that they are very far ahead, very advanced in terms of creating their own EUV machines, which is also very interesting. If China can compete with NVIDIA's chips, for instance, that would also be very, very interesting. And again, for Europe, that's of course a sad story because ASML from Netherlands is basically Europe's only strategic bet in this whole AI race. So if China gets their own lithography EUV machines, then I'm sure ASML will still be ahead, have the most efficient machines, but we wouldn't have sort of that strategic advantage of being the only ones able to produce this vital piece of the whole AI infrastructure, which is at the very basic level production of chips and making and cramming as many transistors into as little space as possible. So I guess we're gonna probably hear more about the China EUV situation and advancement in the coming months and years, but interesting nonetheless. And yeah, it's a game. It's like the moon race. It's the AI race, and there is gonna be some copying. So maybe someday China will create a new, like they did back with DeepSeek, where they developed this whole concept, which rapidly increased the efficiency of LLMs and the model training aspect of it as well. I'm sure there was some copying the other way there as well. So yeah, you're gonna learn from each other, and I think it's good as long as we, of course, can keep it safe, especially with the cybersecurity concerns, and as long as we don't suddenly have all of the global encryption exposed and so on. But we'll see how all that is going to play out. And if these model releases weren't enough, we've also finally seen XAI getting back into the model release game with the release of Grok 4.5, which is a really capable coding model, not at the frontier level, but a cheaper model that's a really good worker model for basically, programming. And of course, these advancements for XAI have become possible after the acquisition of Cursor and all the model harness and the learnings that they have gotten through the development of the Cursor development tool, which is also a really nice development platform that I've also been using a lot. And I'm really excited to see what this synergy between XAI and Cursor can contribute with in the space of AI. And also heard from Elon that he basically posted a while back that at some point they had 7 models in training in the Colossus 2 compute infrastructure. And that's really exciting. I guess it's I don't know if it's still 7 because it was a few months ago, and they also released Grok 4.5 now. So it could be less, or it could be even more if they basically keep scaling. So they're gonna launch quite a few models in the coming month, like before New Year's. So it's exciting to see the level of development, or like the incremental advancement we'll see from the Grok models in the coming releases, to see how if this can actually accelerate them to the frontier level or even beyond, because that's just going to be so exciting to see, because they have so much compute, and also because they have the long-term strategy of sending AI data centers into space and becoming sort of the infrastructure layer for AI, not on ground, but basically as a sort of an AI shield surrounded the planet, which is just so fascinating to think about, that we would have this crazy infrastructure out there with Starlink for beaming the tokens down to Earth, and having this high-speed internet around Earth, and also all the compute power around Earth, just getting energy directly from the sun. That's, of course, a few years into the future, but I'm just happy to see that Grok is starting to catch up with the model releases too. And finally, to conclude this episode, I just want to briefly mention the something beyond just the raw model capabilities that was also released this summer, and it's basically the new version of ChatGPT voice mode and also Claude's voice mode. So now Claude finally has advanced voice capabilities too. I have tested both, and I must say they're both very, very good. I probably prefer ChatGPT's voice mode because it seems just a bit more snappy. And honestly, I was really blown away when I tried it. I haven't used voice mode in quite a while, so I'm not sure if it's been incrementally getting better or if it's just a really breakthrough release, because it almost feels like talking to a human now. The big limitation I saw in the past was that you would kind of like interrupt each other, and it felt very much turn-based, like you know, like almost like a walkie-talkie. Like you say something, you want to wait, and then if you say something before the agent replies, then you basically screw everything up, and it's a whole new prompt. But this, especially with ChatGPT, just seems so like fluid. It's like talking to a human. You can interrupt the person, and you can kind of talk at the same time, and it doesn't really matter. It still catches up on whatever you say, and it's very low latency. And I really love just a small detail, like the voice basically says like checking every time you ask for something, every time he will have to look up something on the internet or something, and it just seems very intelligent that it can really talk to even APIs and so on. So you could probably set up a lot of crazy automations with this. I'm gonna test this way more and probably make a dedicated video for that, because I really want to make a flow where I can easily prompt my OpenClaw agent or even my Codex or Claude Code instances using voice, and it just seems very like a very good time to do it, because it's basically solved now. Like, it seems so fluid that it's almost like talking to a human. Then if I can get that sort of voice assistant connected to preferably my Telegram, so it can push prompts to my OpenClaw agent, then I could be so productive on my daily walks, where I just like walk around the city, through a park or whatever, and just basically talk to this voice assistant that will then just prompt all my projects and basically do my work while I walk as a conversation with an agent. I'm really excited about that. I already do it while I walk just by typing, but it's probably not the safest, and it's also a bit slow. Typing on phone, I mean, kind of fast, but would be a lot more fluid if it could just be in my ears and I can just enjoy the walk while I just talk to this voice assistant and basically prompt all my projects and get a lot of work started while just doing something else that's not related to sitting in front of a computer. So that's the other aspect of AI. It's just really freeing that you are able to get so much work done in all kinds of contexts where you wouldn't normally get any work done whatsoever. So I will dive into that a bit more deeply and also show it in a coming video. That being said, I hope you learned something from this video, and please comment down below with your thoughts on everything. How do you see the AI models? Like, who will win the model race? Is it gonna be China or the US? What's Europe gonna do? And any other comments or questions you might have, please write it down below. I'll try to read all the comments. So stay tuned for more content like this, and have a really great day. See you soon. Bye-bye. Thank you for watching. If this was helpful, please like and subscribe.